Reaching a bigger area, okay? What happens is we set this as a pulsating current. So when the electricity goes through the water, it hits the fish. And there's a lot of crazy research out there. It'll blow your mind. If you want to, you know, you're bored, I'm sure you're bored as students, right? You have lots of time to read things. But there's some really interesting papers on the effects of electroshocking on size of fish and orientation of the fish in the water. So when the electricity hits them, ideally, depending on which way they're facing though, it makes the muscle fibers contract. Speckled ace, he's got a subterminal mouth, which means he's kind of got like this gonzo nose. He's not a sucker mouth, but he's not like a upturned mouth like a trout.
Bush. This is by far the most gorgeous bush in the desert of any kind. That's my opinion. I'm colorblind, so it has to be really brightly colored for me to appreciate it. So, but this one is an exceptionally beautiful plant.
And so in this case, I brought some bags just in case anything was a lot further along, but these have just barely started to flower. So we're not going to be bagging anything. All you're going to do is you're going to be pulling and you're just going to be dropping them right where they're at. But the first thing you'll notice, you know, just the deeply lobed leaves, they're really hairy. So, you know, you'll notice that the leaf margins are very hairy, and you know, my technical terms here, you know, a very spotted or a very speckled leaf surface on those. This actually is a location that closes seasonally because it's really good tortoise habitat, even though it's really rocky. So there actually is a culvert that tortoises could potentially use, again, just to protect, you know, tortoise and tortoise habitat. There's like I said, a seasonal technical climbing closure in this area.
Much better than pulling invasive thistles.
Desert. And then there's another shrub that's very common out here, creosote bush. Okay, so if you grab some of these leaves and crush them, you smell kind of like creosote, like they put on telephone poles and that sort of thing. So those are really kind of the dominant features of these areas. Golden eagles.
Wow!
Caterpillars, they're maybe this long, but there's 100 or 200 of them in each one of those little tents. If you put your tent down here, you'll hear them kind of rain down on you all night long. They're not very palatable to most birds because they're real bristly, and the bristles are uncomfortable for the birds, but some birds can specialize in them. One of them that specializes is the yellow-billed cuckoo, which is a threatened species. We don't have them here too often because the habitat's not quite right. But orioles will eat these as well. So it's a real good food for some birds, and it will affect the trees. It'll actually defoliate the trees, during the summer, but then the trees will come back. So it doesn't actually kill them, but it does take all the leaves off. You'll notice that there are like different sizes of sediment that have been deposited in different layers here. So this layer is a real fine sediment, like a silt perhaps. Then you'll see this layer right above it is a little coarser sediment, more like a sand. And then you'll see sort of a layer that's cobbly sized rocks in here. So this is a mixture of a number of different really stones. We would call this what? These larger rocks. Conglomerate, very good. How about this that's mostly silt? Could be a shale, could be a siltstone. Call that sandstone up here. These are a real common feeder bird. Here you can see them at your feeder all winter long, except all the birds that are here in the winter, the Oregon juncos, the pink-sided juncos, and the slate-colored juncos are all gone in the summer, replaced by gray-headed junco. So these are migratory. People see juncos in the same place all the time, but it's actually different birds, different subspecies during different seasons. So this is, it's a dark-eyed junco of the race, the Oregon junco. So we call these Oregon juncos, even though they're all up there.
When the net's blowing, birds can see it easier. When you're too close to the vegetation or the wind's blowing your vegetation, you can see if you look at my nets closely, they've been repaired a lot. When I check a net, I should like to bounce that bottom panel, because if you have that set low enough, which is one thing you want to avoid, you have a bird on the ground, if you just walk through, you may miss it. So there's a trade-off between how low you have this and whether or not you end up with a bird in the ground, or if you're netting over water in the water, because you don't want a bird in the water. Same thing with bats. You have different kind of pole setups. You have backpacking setups. Most of the work we do is close enough to walk to, so the heavy conduit, we've got rebar stakes there holding it up. If you were hiking very far, you wouldn't want that. You'd want some lighter weight. You set the nets up, and once you trammels, these lines here, you're really taut. When you spread your panels out, you do one little bag in it. The idea is the bird hits the net, falls down in the bag, and lays there and waits for you to catch it. I've had one bird do that in my whole career. The other ones get as tangled as they possibly can.
Pretty aggressive in our collaring efforts throughout the state. We've actually switched everything over since 2014. We don't really use a whole lot of the VHF only collars. We switched everything over to satellite. We now use iridium satellite collars on everything, so they take the point every 2 hours. Collars last for 3 years. We get really fine scale movements, and then those data are all uploaded through Iridium Satellite Network to a website, and we can actually look at the location of all these animals in near real time.
Maybe if I have a volunteer that can walk this over and set it in the brush over there, something like that for me. If I point that at him, you can hear. As I turn away, this one's not working. Hear that fading away there, and then as I come back in, point to it, it gets louder and louder. So that's nice. And another thing for a guy like me that's kind of deaf, that sound, they also, the receiver also has like a little meter here, and as you get closer, that meter will go higher and higher.
I'm hiding the collar from Serena. Let's make her work for it.
All right.
National Park, and that means the only way is to cross this river to get to the other side.
Oh yeah. Yes.
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 Hell yeah.